Hi gang. Trying a new toy this week. I got myself a ring light because not just because of the booktube videos or book vlog, whatever I'm not really sure. Not just because of the book videos I do, but for some other things as well. So playing with that new toy today to see how it goes. Literally like just unpacked it 10 minutes ago. So I'm kind of excited. Wanted to give you an update on my readathons. I didn't expect to have a real productive week this week because it was homecoming. And I'm the color guard coach and the uniform mom for the local marching band. So I expected to be a little bit busy. Game day on homecoming week always means a parade followed immediately by pregame pizza, followed immediately by let's get ready for the game, followed by a game. And last night's game went into overtime. And then this morning I had a choral clinic I had to play for. We've got kids getting ready for all-state choir auditions. And so we had a preparatory clinic with them and a collegiate professor from Northwestern College in Orange City. So I didn't expect to get a lot done, but I got more than I expected. I would have been happy with 1 or 2 books, and I actually got 4 done, and some others partway done. And that doesn't count the one cheesy romance that took me like an hour to read, but that was just sort of for fun because I couldn't sleep one night. So, you know. So we're going to jump right in. The first book I finished this week, and I have the pictures on my Kindle again just because I can't. London Macabre. This was one that I did for all 3 of the readathons. I believe I had it in there for all 3 of them. It was under the Monsterathon, which of course is my priority readathon this month. It was the Chimera. It could be multiple genres, good versus evil. There was some mythology, actually lots of mythology, both Egyptian and Greek and Judeo-Christian, all of those kind of thrown in together. Plus some other more obscure ones I'd never heard of. But it was also a murder mystery, and it was also a quest for archaeological treasures and things like that. So it fell under the Chimera prompt for the Monsterathon, and under both the Hogwarts house battles and the TBR Readathon bingo, it was a book I had previously DNF'd. Originally, I DNF'd it because I was had a chance to arc and review some books, and I set this one aside. I wanted to love this book. The premise is awesome, and it starts out really well. There are a couple of major flaws in the book, I think, that would have landed it right around a 3.5 star for me. The plot is fantastic. The basic overall plot is engaging and sort of pulse pounding and heart stopping. The author gets really caught up in letting us dig deeply into the thoughts of characters, and you're like, okay, this is going to matter. And 6 pages later, the character's dead, and that really deep insight we had into them doesn't matter at all, and it doesn't come back again at all in the book. The other flaw is there's this group of men that are fighting the evil that's trying to take over the world. Someone has literally opened the door to hell, and so demons of all sorts are coming back, and there's the big bad they've got to try to destroy. And it's this group of men, sort of a knights defending the realm kind of thing. And he tries to make that group the main character, and it doesn't play well. There's not one of the lives that you get really invested in. And there's just an awful lot of extraneous description into the thinking and the psyche of all the characters involved that, like I said before, it doesn't come back into play very often. The premise was great. The plot concept was amazing. The execution left a little bit to be desired because it really would have worked better. I almost wish he would have done it as a series. I almost wish Steven Seville would have created a series in which he stretched out the battle and made it minor demons that they were fighting first leading up to the big bad. So he could have focused on, I think there were 6 characters in the organization. It would almost have been better if he had done a book where each of the men in this secret order were the main character. And so we got to know them and see their part in the battle, or even maybe do what Stephanie Meyer did with Twilight and tell the story 6 different times from different perspectives. Give us a little mini novella version of each character's perspective on it, rather than jumping from character to character to character. Way early on, he kills one of the men in the secret society, and you really don't care because you didn't get a chance to invest and to become attached and emotionally connected to the character. So you're kind of like, oh, that's a bummer. He stuck a body double out there, a doppelganger out there, and the guy's dead. Sad. It really doesn't have any kind of an emotional impact because you haven't connected to him. There's no emotional investment in his survival. Really wanted to love it. kind of liked it. That's as far as I got. The Reckoning by Niney Hammond was the next book that I finished, and this was everything I wanted it to be. Fun little cover there. The Reckoning by Niney Hammond. It's a trilogy that I started and then got distracted from and came back to this year, and I reread the first one and read the second one, and this is the third. It had everything in it that I wanted for the ending. It's a faith-based thriller, so there's lots of scary super bads, and it was everything I wanted it to be. It was everything that we've been following the same basic group of about 4 or 5 characters since the first book. And you have one of my favorite moments, ironically, way early on, one of the main characters, there are 3 people who were children together and just completely lost all memories of one summer. But one of them has grown up to be a pastor, and he finds out way early on in the series that his wife is cheating on him. Their daughter is shot in a school shooting, but she survives really miraculously. Like, they had pronounced her dead, and suddenly she sits up and is talking again. But the series of circumstances and the series of events that happen bring him and his wife's lover into this mess together. So they're having to work together to defeat the big evil. And in the end of the story, near the end of the story, the 2 of them have been taken by someone working for the agents of the agents of evil, and they're locked up together. And so there's nothing to distract, and so they kind of verbally have it out over the affair, and the lover has to admit, in the end, she chose you. The last message, because she ends up being shot by the evil guy in book 2, and the lover has to admit to him that she sent the very last text message she sent to me was, "It's over. I'm sorry. Goodbye. I don't ever want to see you again." So he has to admit to the husband that he had won her back in the end before she was killed. It was everything I wanted out of the series. Niney Hammond, it killed it. She knocked it out of the park with these 3 books. I am absolutely devastated that the trilogy is over. Like, I wanted to read it. Now that it's over, I'm like, where do I go from here? So it was one of those kind of series for me, which I'm thrilled with how well it turned out. The next book I read it because, and the Reckoning, getting off track here. The Reckoning was not in that was not in the Monsterathon. I know I said that's my priority, but I think I'm down to like 3 books I need to finish for that one. But in the Hogwarts house battle, that was, means a lot to me. I'd been invested in the series for so long. I was really ready to get it read and finished. And on the TBR readathon bingo, it was, I know it's on here somewhere. Oh, on my shelf the longest. Yeah, I've had this on my shelf for like 3 years to read. This next one I only read because the Hogwarts house battle had a prompt that needed you to read a book with a number in the title. This had a number in the title. I got it free on my Kindle. Really didn't stress much about it. It was a romance. And I was like, great, nice, light, fluffy romance. There is a massive plot twist at the end that leaves you going, what? Out of a romance novel. This woman, the book, let me show you the book. Let me show you the title. Let me show you the cover. The book is called One as a Promise by Pam Godwin. This woman is devastated after the loss of the man she loved. She had been told he was a contractor and had to go work on an oil rig for the government overseas. And she works as a dance instructor. She has a studio built on the back of her house that he built for her before he left. His motorcycle sits in the middle of her home because she can't bring herself to get rid of it. They were supposed to get married when he came home. He never made it home in time for the wedding. And so, this guy breezes his way into her life one night and tells her he's bought the restaurant where she belly dances part-time and is reopening it in his casino. He comes from a family who owns a lot of hospitality real estate, hotels and casinos and things like that. So he's reopening the restaurant and wants her to come dance like full-time for him in his restaurant. So she does. They fall in love. Everything seems to be going swimmingly until the man in her life comes back. The first man in her life, he's not dead. Big twist. You're like, oh crap. Then, because she had gotten up one night, couldn't sleep, sitting on her back porch, and he shows up. Then she finds out not only is he not dead, her new boyfriend and her old boyfriend know each other. And when the first guy left to go overseas, he left the second guy to watch over her and keep her safe. That's how the first book ends. It's a series. The next book picks up where the first one left off. I love to read romance novels. I'm a 50-year-old woman. I can't do Hallmark Channel. But I love a good romance novel read because I read a lot of heavier books too. And for me, romance books are that nice little palate cleanser. Like, you know who's going to win in the end. You know the guy's going to get the girl. So when they're all cuddly at the end of the book, I'm like, okay, good. And then the supposedly dead the previous boyfriend shows up, and you're like, wait, what? And then you find out he knows the new guy she's dating, and he has mind blown. This turned into so much more than just a simple little romance, and I'm like, I kind of want to read the series now. The next book picks up where this one left off. I don't know what's going to happen after this, but it went from being just this cute little romance filler read that would take care of her prompt to, oh my gosh, I've never had a romance twist like that at the end and just totally screwed with my head. So that was kind of fun. The last book I finished, and I've got a few that are in process, and I'll talk about those too, but the last book I finished this week was a nonfiction. I picked it up for the Monsterathon originally as the book under the prompt, The Real Monsters. This one encouraged you to read a true crime book. It's one thing to read about fantasy monsters. It's another one to read about real people who are just monstrous in their behavior. Under the Hogwarts house battle, there is one. I stretched this one just a little bit. From another generation, because the crimes being discussed, he was being tried for them when I was like 11. So he's from a completely different generation than me. I only vaguely remember hearing his name when I was a kid. I didn't learn much about him until I was older. So the crimes are really kind of a generation removed from my life, even though they were occurring when I was a child. I wasn't aware of them as a child, which is probably a good thing when I tell you who it is. Under the TBR readathon bingo, this one, different background than me. I was referring to the author, not the subject of the book. Her name is Anne Rule, the author. She worked at a crisis call center, kind of like a suicide hotline, but I think it was more than just that. But a crisis call center, and one of the people she worked right next to and struck up a friendship with was none other than Ted Bundy. The Stranger Beside Me, the classic case of serial murder by Anne Rule. It's kind of a running joke when people talk about serial killers. Oh, he was a really nice, quiet guy, kind of kept to himself. Anne Rule knew him well, not romantically involved. She frequently says that and she's very clear about that. She's like, there was never any hint of romance. She never felt attracted to him. He never flirted with her. The age difference made it more of kind of a mom, son, aunt, nephew kind of relationship. She felt like the protective maternal instinct towards him. And she talks about the interesting thing about her life is she also worked as a transcriptionist for the local law enforcement officials. So she would get case files that she would need to type up into clearly readable documents. So when things started to go south for him, she was very honest and she wouldn't cross lines at all. And so when he would write her letters and law enforcement would start to hint that they want to see him, she would be like, not unless he says it's okay. And so she would contact Ted and say, Kings County Sheriff's Department wants to see your letters. He'd say, yeah, fine, go ahead and let him. So there was this very clearly drawn line for her that she wouldn't betray his trust. And when things really started to go south for him as far as arraignments and trials not going the way he wanted them to, he would contact her and send her letters and call her from the jail and things. So she had an insider's look into his life that was very unique. There's a special on Netflix. I think it's still on there right now. Zac Efron plays Ted Bundy. And it focuses more on his relationship with a woman named Meg, which really happened. And her heartbreak and the fact that she actually turned him in. She was one of the people that helped get him arrested initially. And then regretted her choice later and still really loved him and then found a way to move on with her life. But Ted confided in Anne more as like a mother or an older female relative kind of thing. So her perspective on his story is very, very unique because there were never any romantic entanglements. But she was a friend and freely admits in the book as you get through it that there came a point where she had to admit to herself, yeah, I think he did it. He's a friend. And I value my time with him. He was good to me. He was kind. He was funny. He was a hoot to hang out with, but I think he did these awful things. And so watching the story through her eyes for me was a really unique perspective. Because it's so easy to look at him and go, what a horrible person he was, what horrible things he did. But for me, this book allowed me to see the collateral damage left behind, the people who cared for him, his mother. She spent some time talking about his mom's reaction to everything. So it was a unique perspective for me to watch Anne struggle with coming to grips with the fact that her friend had done all of this. So it was a really kind of a unique take on the story. It was a very human element to the story for me. Not that it makes I don't feel any differently towards Ted. I don't feel any differently towards him for his crimes, but it brought an element of compassion into the story for me, for those around him, who were wrecked by the choices that he made. So actually a really good read. The book is a little bit dated. This was the updated 20th anniversary edition that I read. I think initially it was published, 1980. So it was updated in the year 2000. So even now, there's a little thing at the back of the book. I'm trying to remember what it was called. Update 20 years later. So they did like a 20-year update, because things had happened since 1980. His trial was actually, the last of his trials, I think, was in 1979. So 1980 was still really, really concurrent with the trial, basically. So they updated things 20 years after the fact, just to kind of give you a heads up of where things were. To give you an idea, I'm still reading, obviously. I've still got things in the works. I'm never satisfied to have just one book going at a time. I usually have 2 or 3, just because I'm a glutton. No, I'm not. It's because I'm a mood reader to a certain extent. I don't mood read like some people do. I don't have this issue where I don't want to be, I don't know what I want to read, or I want to be able to choose what I read. Mine is more an issue of, I'll have 2 or 3 books going, and one of them will be like, I really don't want to read that right now, so I'm going to read something else. So this is, I have 3 going. One of them, the reason I'm reading it at the same time as others is A, it's huge, and to just sit and read that straight through with nothing else would probably bore the tar out of me. The other reason is, in the Hogwarts house battles, there is a book, a prompt for a book that you only read at night, only read after dark. So I'm taking the whole month to get through this one. And that is, of course, the complete fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. Making good progress. It's not hard to get through. And the nice thing is there are several stories, so I can kind of start and stop throughout the night and go do other things. I'm making some progress. I hope I can get through it by the end of the rest of the month. Who knows? I have a couple of later weekends coming up, so I'm hoping that maybe a Friday when I don't have a football game will give me a chance to sort of just veg and read. The other one I have started, which is, and the Grimm's Fairy Tales is under the What Big Eyes. It's supposed to be just something big for the Monsterathon, which I think that qualifies. Something I read only at night for the Hogwarts house battle, and the biggest book in my TBR. Right now, this is the largest book in my TBR. So that qualifies in all 3 of the readathons. The other one that I have started, this is the classic Creeper. This is the classic horror character in the Monsterathon, in the Hogwarts house battle. It is the classic novel, works there. And in the TBR readathon, again, there's another spot for a classic book. And that is, of course, Bram Stoker's Dracula, this really fun collector's copy that I picked up for like $10 at Barnes & Noble. I don't run out and replace all of, but that one was just too cool. Dracula in a red cover with black edge pages. Come on. The last one I'm currently reading right now, and this is the one I will probably finish first, just because I've gotten to that point in the story where I'm like, I have to know what happens. This is, again, the end of a trilogy that I've been wanting. Well, no, it's not a trilogy. I think there's 5 books, 4 maybe in the series. I know there's at least one more, but this is the continuation of a series that I've been dying to finish. I read the first book. Got it for free, I think through maybe BookBub or something. Got it off of Amazon for free. Read it, reviewed it. The author saw my review and went, here's the next book. Please tell me what you think. Sure, you want to give me a free book? I'll read it and tell you what I think. And luckily, I've loved them all. This is not on my readathon, not on my TBR for the Monsterathon. Like I said, that one's like 3 books away from being done. It is on my Hogwarts house battles for the one that I predict will be a 5-star, because the other 2 have been 5 stars, and this one started off with a bang. I have no doubt. The second book left us right before a war started, and this is the one where it's supposed to start. Secret heirs, rightful heirs that were buried possibly alive, and their offspring are out there in the world, and the current emperor is paranoid and losing his grip on reality, and it's intense. This is book 3. I know there's a book 4 for sure out there, maybe a 5. I don't know. So it's on my Hogwarts house battle for the predicted 5-star. It's on the TBR readathon for the first or last book in a series. This is, when I originally got it, was the last book. The new one just came out. I didn't know there was going to be another, so I'm cheating with this one. The Emperor's War, Tales of Saladia, book 3, by R.A. Denny. Just a phenomenal fantasy story. Really, really rich world building. Ironically, even kind of confronts the issues of prejudice, because there are entire groups of people that are ignored, negated, treated badly because of their ethnicity, because of how they were born, whatever. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see where we go from here. I'm excited to see where the book ends. I'm pretty sure it'll be phenomenal. To finish up the Monsterathon, I only have to finish Dracula and Grimm's, those two. And then the Angry Mob prompt calls for you to read a book that's been recommended by several people. So that one I'll be reading, The Hate You Give. That one also sits on the others as well. I'm a couple away from a bingo, a couple of places where I'm close to a bingo on the TBR Readathon bingo card. I don't believe I'll get 24 books read for the TBR Readathon. I just don't see myself being that adventurous and productive this month. The last weekend of the month, I have not only a football game on Friday night, I also have a marching competition that Saturday and a 6-hour guard camp for our winter competition routine that Sunday. So I don't think I'm going to get a lot of reading done the last weekend of the month of September. So I'm hoping to get a lot of things completed before then. So that's where we sit. That's where our progress kind of is this week. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and let me know what books you're reading. Tuck them in the comments down below. Let me know what you've read this summer or fall that's just really captured your attention. Have a great night.